Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills and Porsche 992.1 owners with the Active Shutter Grill. We've now got a new mesh solution for you. These grill openings on the stock unit are pretty big. While the active shutters are a nice feature, it doesn't really offer full protection, so let's move the stock grill away for a moment and take a peek at the solution that we came up with. This is our 4-piece design that splits each side into 2 pieces that will be form-fitting. On the outer pieces, there's a rubber trim section that protects from scratching a key area. And the inner piece is specifically designed with some unique bends as well as an elaborate cut on the end. Also included will be some cable ties to use during the installation. Domestic owners can also get this kit available with a bottle of automotive goop as an added option. Now back to the install. We need to do this behind the stock grill, and thus bumper removal is required. The side furthest from the center of the bumper should be done first, which is the side with the motor over here. It's important to note that each piece will have some strategic cuts on the edge that fits in the center of the grill. These cuts here will line up with the splines on the back of the center vertical bar shown here. When you position the mesh cutouts with the splines properly, then the mesh will line up like this and fall into place, and the rubber trim will rest on the edge of the motor cover. Also, since we're installing another mesh piece next to this one, make sure that the first mesh piece is in the center channel and moved over to leave room for another piece. Next, grab a cable tie and plan installing this as far down as possible around the vertical bar while still wrapping around the full depth of the mesh. It's a simple yet effective technique, and I understand I'm making this look very easy because the grill's been removed from the bumper here. To clarify, the grill can stay on the bumper, but the bumper does need to be removed from the vehicle. Linked in the description will be a video on how to remove the bumper. For the second tie, we're aiming to get this around the vertical bar and in line with the highest up horizontal bar. In the end, both of the first ties will be concealed pretty well, and tucking this tie behind the bar is a clever way of disguising it while the slats are open. Also, these first couple of ties should be wrapped around firmly, but don't crush the mesh in the process. With both ties on, trim the tail ends off, and then let's take a look at how this is positioned. The bottom grill should be very form-fitting to the edge of the stock grill and bottoming out right about here. There's a little flap on the top edge here, and that should also bottom out in the corner. With the mesh properly positioned, we're going to tie the side of the mesh on a little looser than the previous areas. In my installation here, I'm wrapping the ties around the rod portion of the fin, but if you can't get it over that far, that's totally fine to just tie the mesh to the bar. These ties are only going to be used temporarily, so position doesn't matter nearly as much as tension does. Speaking of which, these ties need to be attached significantly more loose than the other 2 that we did. The reason being is that when we're done, we need to have this mesh about a 1/4 inch spaced off the back of the bars as shown here. We don't want much space between the mesh and the bars, but there should be enough to easily slide something behind the bars like what I'm doing here with some foam. Now on to the other side, and you'll notice a difference in the center divider, and that was done intentionally, and the reason that should be obvious when we get it into position. In this close-up, you'll see the cutouts on the side will allow for the ties of the first mesh piece to come through easily and not cause any interference. If there is any interference though, double check the positioning of the ties of the first piece and see if they can be moved to better accommodate the second piece. To tie this piece on, we'll be using the little horizontal supports on the top and bottom bars. These are in the perfect position to provide us a mounting point for the second half without overlapping on the first mounting ties. Yes, a small bit of the tie will be shown from the front, but it's going to blend in fairly well when we're finished. Like with the first half, the portion of the mesh in the vertical bar can be tightened reasonably well. Cut the tail ends of the ties off when satisfied with the tension, and let's check to make sure that we have a small bit of clearance on the back edge of the bars. Again, it's not much of a gap, but there's some room between the mesh. Now move on to the outer edge near the center of the bumper, and I'll be tying this edge around the bars like I did before. And just like with the other side on the outer edge, don't over tighten this part. We just want the mesh to be making good contact all the way around and nothing more at this stage. If the ties are tightened too much, then the mesh will close in too far and eventually touch the back of the bars, which we don't want to have happen. If your mesh is touching the bars, then you'll probably need to cut off the outer ties and probably reposition the mesh and then try tightening the ties a little bit more loosely. Trim the tail ends of the ties off, and let's take a look at how this inner edge should be looking with the mesh in place. There are some precise cutouts that should be strategically going around the peaks and valleys that match up with the same design on the stock grille. Give this one more look over and make sure that the mesh is tight up against the back edge of the frame and that the mesh is not touching the active shutter bars. Afterward, I'll grab some automotive goop. We'll be using this to permanently affix the mesh in place. If there's enough room in the bumper, this can be applied directly from the bottle like so. This is going on a few areas where the mesh is going to be making full contact with the back edge of the grille. Make sure not to spill any of this through the front and keep the installation of this relatively low down on the mesh to avoid any potential of it going through the front. In areas where there's not enough room to get the bottle in position, then goop can be applied by putting a dab of it onto a toothpick first and then positioning the adhesive like this. Please note that the goop is simply what I like to use because it's weatherproof and it's a little flexible, which gives it some great durability. While it works great, it also does take a long time to cure, about a full day. If you want to use a different adhesive that cures quicker or fits your needs better, then feel free to substitute the goop for an adhesive of your choice. With the goop installation, it's also important to note that it's initially fairly viscous and can start to run down. To prevent mine from running down, I have a small fan positioned off screen that's blowing on my grill. The air movement from a fan will, generally speaking, stop the goop in its tracks. After letting this sit overnight, I came back and cut the 2 ties off from each of the outer edges. I'm going to keep the ties of the center bar as they help retain some key support intact for a good long installation. Here's how one of these looks from the front, and I think it's quite a nice and elegant solution to a complicated problem. Just in case you want to see the bars move unobstructed, then here's me actuating them by hand. I know there's other solutions on the market, but this one's easier to clean out than some of the others and better looking than some of the others too. Speaking of which, here's how this mesh set looks installed. We keep the overwhelming majority of the stock look while preventing a lot of debris from hitting your radiators. Well, that's all I have for this video. I hope you liked it, and feel free to drop any comments or questions down below, and thanks for watching.